Alrighty, welcome to a lesson based around aspects of a text for text study and a little look at events. That's the aim for today's lesson. So this is all based around the Peanut Butter Falcon, which is our 1.2 visual text unit studying text. So it's what you will write on for the external, but it's also what you will write on for our first internal, which is the close viewing assessment. So what we need to look at is aspects of the text. So aspects is just the term that's given in the NZQA criteria. And it says that you're in the essay showing an understanding of aspects of a studied visual text. So I'm just going to go through what aspects are, and we're going to cover one of them today, and then hopefully in the next lessons and other videos cover some of the other ones as well. So aspects simply refer to things or parts of a text. They're the parts that we look at and find examples from in a film or in a poem or in a short story, and we discuss those parts and we analyze them. So analyze them just means thinking about them in detail and talking about them in detail. So when we can talk about those aspects, we show our understanding of the text. When we do essay writing in the exams and in practice, our essay questions are focused on an aspect. So they're based on at least one aspect and talking about that aspect. So an aspect is just a thing or a part. So these are examples of aspects, and you'll be very familiar with these from any text studies that you've done this year or in other texts in previous years. So a character or characters are an aspect. So talking about characters in the text, and we've got a picture there of Tyler and Zach, who are our characters, our main characters. Themes, ideas, messages, they've got different names, but those are another aspect. Relationships or conflict are an aspect. And we have a really clear relationship between Zach and Tyler. We've also got one between Zach and Eleanor, and also Tyler and Eleanor as well. So they're a really big part of our text. Events, moments, scenes, actions, whatever you want to call them, they're a really big aspect. So we will look at them, and by looking at those, we'll hopefully reveal other aspects of the text that we understand, because those events or moments, they're going to help to show relationships or characters or themes or setting, which takes on to the next one. So a setting, which might also be called a place or a space, they're an aspect of the text. So ours, the setting is in America, and also kind of the Mississippi River that they're traveling down. Film techniques, which might also be called language features, which can be confusing when you're doing a visual text study, but film techniques are from the film language, so close-ups and things. They're like the metaphors. They're used to explore ideas. They're just visual or verbal. They can sometimes be called details. They can be called methods. So there's different synonyms, which means similar words that they can also show. Change or development, contrast, anything like that, that is an aspect. Things that refer to structure, beginning of a text, end of a text, turning point, they are aspects of the text. So some text that works really well. So the beginning of our text works well to set up our expectations of the characters, but we might not be able to get a full essay out of them with our text. Symbols or symbolism, they're sometimes considered a method or a film technique or a language feature, but they're another aspect of a text. So those are some examples of aspects. They're not every aspect that ever existed, but they're the most common ones, and they're the ones that you'll see cropping up in the exam questions. So for our text, we're kind of focusing on a couple of aspects. So we're not going to look at setting. We'll look at film techniques, but we're not focusing on those. We're going to focus on characters, Zach and Tyler mainly, because they're easier to talk about. We can focus a little bit on Eleanor, but we can get a much better essay and many more examples and better value by looking at those two characters. We can look at themes, ideas, or messages. We're going to look at relationships. We could look at conflict, but relationships works really well with our text. Events, these are going to be what we're focusing on in a moment, and we're going to look a little bit at change, because we do see some change in our characters. But those first four are kind of our main focus, and most essays will have questions based around them, which works really well. So why just focus on them? We've got a set amount of time, and these ones are easier to identify, relatively simple to discuss. They fit really well with our text. We could talk about settings, we can talk about symbolism. If we saw essay questions on them, we could talk about them, but For the text that we're studying and the bits that are easier to talk about, those topics work really well. Which leads us into the slide that I accidentally nudged before. So, events. So, what you're going to do is consider events from the text. So, you've already got a list of events, which looks like this one here, which hopefully you've worked through and you've done all the colour coordination in a previous lesson. What you're going to do is think about which events from that list, and there's something like 20 something events, which ones do you think are the most important or significant? And I want you to think about why you're thinking, how you're thinking. So, how do you determine what makes an event important? How do you decide that one event is more important or significant than the other? So, I want you to pause the video. I want you to go back to that list and scan back through it again. That's just in OneNote. And I want you to think to yourself, which are the most important events in the text? If I was to take those out, this text wouldn't be as good, or it wouldn't work as well, or it wouldn't help to show me something kind of cool about a character or the film. So have a look and see which events you think are the most important. So pausing it now. Hopefully you've come back and you've done that. And I want you to think about how you decided which events were important or what makes them more important than another event. A common thing that we do when we think about events is we kind of think about the plot. And so we think, well, if Tyler didn't come back for Zach, then the whole story wouldn't have happened. Okay, and that's a pretty common way of thinking about things, and that's pretty common to do at primary, at intermediate, and even maybe a little bit when you're in year 9. But when we come into year 11 and we go into text analysis and we try to grab a little more detail, we want to think beyond plot. So one thing that we do to think about whether an event is important is what they show and what we learn from them. So that's how we decide the significance of an event. We don't just think, well, if this didn't happen, then this wouldn't happen. We think, well, this is important because it shows me Zach's character doing this. This is important because it shows me that Tyler's character has changed. And when you're thinking about why it's more important than another, that's kind of up to you and that's personal discretion. But if we're thinking smarter, not harder, the best events that we can focus on are the events that show multiple things, or we learn about multiple things, because then you don't have to memorize as many scenes, and that makes it a lot easier for writing essays at the end of the year. So here are some things that make an event important. Basically, does that event show an aspect? Yes, it's important then. Does it show multiple aspects? Yes, then it's probably more important. So they might show us an idea or a theme or a message. If a scene shows us that, it's going to be more important than another scene that maybe just progresses the plot slightly. Do we learn more about a character? Do we see them change or develop, or we just see something about them? They're kind or they're gruff or something like that. So that's going to really help us. We learn about a relationship or a conflict, or we see it develop. So we see what Zach and Tyler are like when they first meet, and then maybe we see a scene later and we see how they are now, and that shows a development in their relationship, and that's really important. Does it help to show a change, development, or contrast? So contrast means something different or a change. So that's kind of something that we can look at. And the best merit or above level responses will always talk about a development and how it is similar or different to earlier or later in the text. So that's what we want if we're wanting to get higher grades. It enables us to explore the message or the messages of the text in greater detail. It might help you explore the setting. It provokes a thought or a feeling. If it shows an aspect, it's important. The clearer it shows it, the easier it is for you to talk about it, the more important it becomes. So I have a list probably of maybe 10 of those events that I think are really important, but that's because for me, they're a lot easier to explain. So everyone's going to think of scenes in different ways or think they're more important than someone else might look at them. And that ultimately comes down to how you can explain it. So everyone's going to have different scenes that they think are more important, and that's going to come down to the fact that everyone has different brains. So what I want you to do is this one here, put it in the wrong order, is go through and here's the task. Go through your events list and in a new page, so you can do this in a book if you want to take some time away from a computer, or just do it in OneNote. Copy out 6 events from that big list that you think are important. as I mentioned before, you don't just want to focus on action or plot. You want to think about what else they show you. So, an idea that you can start to see forming, or a relationship, something like that. For each of those 6 events, I want you to write 1 to 2 sentences describing why you think that event might be important or significant. So, you're going to pick 6 of your top events that you think are the most important in the film. Then you're going to write 1 to 2 sentences describing why they might be important. For example, Tyler returning for Zach is important because it shows me that their friendship is obviously important to Tyler early on, and even though he's a bit rough, he still has good and kind feelings. So that's what you need to do for 6 events. So you can pause this now and get on and do that. And if you've done that, there are extension tasks. All right, so if you finish early and you've got a bit of time on your hands, which I put in the wrong order, here are the extension tasks. So what you can do is identify what aspects are shown in each event. You don't have to explain them, but you could start with that. Can you see an idea? Can you see a relationship? Can you see a message coming through? What can you see? Watch those events again. Go back to the film or find the clips that are in files and watch them again. Add 4 more events to your list so that you have 10 events that you think are significant, and do the same process. Or you can or order your 6, or you might have 10 by now, events into most important and less important. So if you had to order them all or shuffle them around on a page, which would be the most important out of those 6, and which is still important but less important? Alrighty, so those are the extension tasks there. You can pause them if you're up to them, and that's the main task for now. So hopefully you find them straightforward. Any questions, fire them away. But that's aspects, that's events, and that's our first lesson as we try and analyse the text a little more.